He backed away, tripping over the rug. "We have to stop. Emily, stop it now. This was a bad idea, a terrible idea." His voice cracked with panic. He ran his hands through his hair, just as Emily did whenever she felt overwhelmed. It was his panic that pulled Emily out of her cold, analytical state. She saw the sheer terror on the face that looked like Alex's, and it sparked an unexpected emotion in her. Anger, a cold, controlled anger. "Calm down," she commanded. With a swift movement, she turned and ripped the paper with the symbol from the wall. As soon as the paper was torn, the feeling in the room seemed to change. The coldness dissipated slightly. The invisible pressure lessened. Alex gasped for breath, leaning against the sofa. Is it over?" Emily didn't answer right away. She looked at her hand, which was crumpling the paper. Her hand wasn't shaking at all. "I think so," she said, but it wasn't really over. The first sense of helplessness hit them both. They had opened the door themselves, and now they weren't sure if it was completely closed. Alex stood up unsteadily. "I have to go home." He started patting his pockets. "Where are my keys?" "I'm sure I put them in my pocket." "Oh no, don't tell me I lost them again." He searched frantically. Emily just watched in silence. She saw his keys on the coffee table, right in front of him. She didn't say anything, just raised her hand and pointed. Alex followed her hand, and a look of embarrassment crossed his face. "Oh, there they are." He hastily grabbed the keys and rushed to the door. We'll talk later," he called back before disappearing into the night. Emily was left alone in the quiet living room. She walked to the mirror again. Her face was still hers, but her eyes were not. They still held that cold calmness. They had experimented, and they had succeeded, terrifyingly so. They had proven that the reversal was real, but in the process, they had lost a part of themselves. And Emily's biggest fear now was whether she could ever get it back. Sunday passed in a tense silence. Emily and Alex didn't contact each other. Each locked themselves in their own house, in their own world, trying to grapple with the aftershocks of the previous night. For Emily, it was a strange silence in her mind, a place that used to be noisy with rambling thoughts and petty worries. Now it was empty, quiet, and alarmingly clear. For Alex, it was a storm. Rushing thoughts, fragmented memories, a restless feeling that made it impossible for him to sit still. The real change became apparent on Monday morning, when the safety of their homes could no longer hide them. In history class, Mr. Henderson, a teacher who had a habit of calling on students he thought were daydreaming, pointed at Alex. "Mr. Hayes, can you tell the class the main economic impacts of the Civil War?" The whole class turned to look at Alex. This was an easy question for him, the one who was always at the top of the class, but Alex just blinked, his face blank. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. The silence stretched on. "Mr. Hayes?" Mr. Henderson frowned. I'm sorry," Alex stammered, his face turning red. I forgot." A surprised whisper ran through the classroom. Alex Hayes, the top student, had forgotten such basic knowledge. He lowered his head to his desk, feeling everyone's eyes on him like needles. A few hours later, in advanced math class, it was Emily's turn. She was called to the board to solve a complex proof that the whole class was stuck on. She walked up, picked up the chalk, and without a moment's hesitation, began to write. Numbers and symbols flowed from her hand. Fluidly and logically, she not only solved the problem, but she presented it in a way that was more elegant and efficient than the teacher's own method. When she put the chalk down and turned around, the class was dead silent. Even the teacher looked at her with astonishment. Emily just quietly returned to her seat, her face emotionless. She didn't feel proud or happy. She just felt like she had completed a task. At lunchtime, The difference between them became even more stark. Emily's best friend, Sarah, sat down next to her with a tray of food. "Emily, you're a math genius, but hey, are you okay? You haven't said a word all morning." Emily just shrugged, her eyes absently watching the crowd in the cafeteria. She felt a strange distance from Sarah, from her friend's cheerful chatter. "I'm fine," she replied, her voice flat. "Are you sure?" Sarah squinted. "You seem so distant." Meanwhile, in another corner of the cafeteria, Alex was talking non-stop to his friends. He spoke quickly, stumbling over his words, jumping from one topic to another with no clear connection. "I can't believe I forgot about the history test. Then I lost my library card. I'm sure I left it in my backpack. Everything's just so messed up." His friend Mark patted him on the shoulder. "Hey, calm down. You're probably just sleep deprived." But there was an unconcealed worry in Mark's eyes too. Alex was never like this. At the end of the school day, they met by the lockers, not by appointment, but by an inexplicable urge. The atmosphere between them was heavy and suffocating. "People are noticing," Alex said immediately. His voice tense. He was trying to open his locker, but fumbled with the combination. "I forgot my locker combination." "Can you believe it, Emily? My own combination." "We knew this would happen," Emily replied, her voice cold and distant. She easily opened her locker, methodically taking out her books. Alex finally got his locker open. After a few tries, he turned to look at Emily, a mix of fear and resentment in his eyes. "You seem fine with this." "Fine?" Emily slammed her locker shut, the metal sound echoing in the empty hallway. "I'm not fine. I'm dealing with it. Panicking won't solve anything. So what do we do?" Alex pressed, his voice almost desperate. "We can't go on like this. I'm losing my mind, and you're turning into an emotionless robot." His words were like a slap. Emily flinched for the first time that day. A real emotion broke through her cold exterior, a sharp stab of anger, but she quickly suppressed it. "Staying away from that room isn't enough," she said, her voice still calm. "It's like a door that's been left ajar. These changes are still here. They might even get worse." Alex looked at her, his panic slowly being replaced by a terrifying realization. He understood what she meant. "We have to go back," Emily continued, her gaze steady. "We can't let it keep controlling us. We have to find a way to seal it, to close that door for good." A doubt crept into Alex's mind. He looked at Emily, the girl in front of him, the neighbor he had known his whole life. But now, in her green eyes, he saw a strange, cold determination. He wondered, was this still Emily? Or was a part of him looking at him through her eyes? And on the other side, Emily looked at Alex. She saw the chaos, the fear, the weakness she had once hated in herself. Now present in him, a fleeting sense of contempt passed through her. They stood there, just a few feet apart, but in different worlds, bound by a terrible secret and a budding suspicion. They no longer trusted the world around them, and more frighteningly, they were beginning to lose trust in each other. Night fell on the town of Millfield, bringing a sharper, sweeter cold than usual. The sky was cloudless, revealing thousands of twinkling stars like shattered glass on black velvet. The beauty of the universe could not reach the two figures sneaking along the back fence of Millfield High School. The air between them was thick with silence. This was not the companionable silence of their first visit, but a void filled with suspicion and distance. Emily walked ahead, her steps firm and almost soundless on the dry grass. She didn't carry a flashlight. Her eyes seemed to have adjusted to the darkness. Her cold composure was more frightening than night around them. Alex followed behind, small and hesitant. He kept glancing over his shoulder, startling at every snap of a twig underfoot or the rustle of wind through the leaves. His forgetfulness had turned into a constant fear, a feeling that he was losing his grip on his own reality. The decision to return to this room felt like a suicidal act, but Emily's idea of sealing it was the only glimmer of hope he could cling to. They slipped into the school through the old way with an alarming ease. The dark, empty hallway welcomed them like a gaping mouth. This time, it wasn't just silent. It felt hostile. The metal lockers stood in rows like tombstones, and the faint light from the windows cast eerie shapes on the floor. "We just need to lock the door," Alex whispered, his voice lost in the vast space. "Use a really strong lock. Then, we'll get out of here and never come back." He was trying to cling to a simple plan, a tangible solution. Emily didn't answer. She just kept walking, leading them towards the forgotten hallway. As they got closer, the air grew noticeably colder. Alex felt the hairs on his arms stand on end. He could hear his heart pounding in his chest. The door to the room was closed, shrouded in darkness. Emily stopped in front of it, hesitating for a moment. For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed her impassive face, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. She placed her hand on the doorknob and turned. The door swung open without a sound inside. The room was even darker and colder than they remembered. The light from Alex's flashlight seemed to be swallowed by the darkness, only managing to illuminate a small space in front of them. The large mirror on the wall was like a black hole, a liquid surface that reflected nothing but deep darkness. "All right, let's go," Alex said, his voice trembling. "There's nothing here. We'll lock the door and..." But Emily had already stepped inside. She wasn't looking at the mirror. Instead, her gaze was fixed on the wall beside it. "Alex," she called, her voice low and urgent. "Come here." Alex reluctantly stepped inside, aiming his flashlight where Emily was pointing. And then he saw it next to the inverted spiral symbol they already knew. A series of new symbols had appeared. They weren't drawn with chalk or anything similar. They seemed to be carved into the very plaster of the wall, emitting a faint, weak phosphorescent glow. They were not random shapes. They were stylized images, pieces of a story. A small human figure, a door, a spiral, and a face screaming in silence. It was the story on the wall. Emily observed the symbols with a cold curiosity, trying to decipher their meaning, but Alex did not. As soon as his eyes fell on the images, a chill ran down his spine. His face turned pale, white as a sheet of paper. The hand holding the flashlight began to tremble, creating a frantic dance of light on the wall. "No," he whispered, taking a step back. "It can't be." Those symbols were not just drawings. They were echoes from a deep place in his memory, a memory he had buried long ago. He remembered the feeling of a cold hand holding his, the faint smell of antiseptic, Principal Finch's gentle but authoritative voice, and the sheer terror of a child being led into a strange room. "Alex?" Emily turned to look at him, noticing the sudden change. "What's wrong?" But Alex didn't hear her. He was staring at the wall, his eyes wide with horror. The glowing symbols were no longer static images. They were moving, retelling a story in which he was the main character, an experiment in exchange. The pain of being bullied replaced by a cold emptiness. He had been here before. He was part of the original experiment. "What do you remember?" Emily asked, her voice sharp, without a hint of sympathy, only a demand for an answer. Alex shook his head, trying to banish the rising images. But it was too late. The wall had told its story, and the past he had tried to forget was now returning, more terrifying and real than ever. This room was not just a cursed place. It was the repository of his own childhood horror asterisk. They didn't stay in that room any longer. Alex's shock was too great, too real. He stumbled backward out the door, nearly collapsing in the hallway. The light from the flashlight in his hand cast frantic beams on the ceiling before he dropped it to the floor with a clatter. Emily stepped out after him. Her face still disturbingly calm, she picked up the flashlight, turned it off, and decisively closed the door. The sound of the latch clicking echoed in the silence. Like a final full stop, the walk home was shrouded in a heavy silence. Alex walked like a sleepwalker, his hands clutching his head as if afraid the newly surfaced memories would shatter. Emily walked beside him, offering no words of comfort. Her silence was not one of sympathy. It was one of anticipation. She was waiting for answers, and she knew she would get them. They didn't go to Emily's house. By a silent, mutual agreement, they went straight to Alex's house. Was dark. His parents were clearly asleep. The familiar space of the living room now felt alien and suffocating. Alex collapsed onto the sofa, his body trembling uncontrollably. Emily didn't turn on the lights. She sat in the armchair opposite him, a shadow in the darkness. "Tell me," she said. It wasn't a request. It was a command. And then, in the enveloping darkness, Alex began to speak. His voice was hesitant and broken at first, but then the words started pouring out like a dam had burst. "I was about 9, he began, staring into the empty space. "Back then, I wasn't like I am now. I was scared easily, always worried about everything. And at school, there was a group of bullies." He spoke of the endless teasing, the shoves in the hallway, the overwhelming feeling of loneliness and helplessness. He had been a smart kid, but fear had choked him, making it impossible to concentrate, and his grades began to slip. His parents had been very worried. They talked to Principal Finch, Alex continued, his voice catching. He was pretty new back then. "He told my parents about an experimental therapy, a confidence-building program. He used all these fancy words, said it would help me reshape my negative emotional responses." Emily listened in silence, motionless. Alex remembered the day. Principal Finch had personally led him to that room. It wasn't scary then. It was clean, bright, with just a table, 2 chairs, and that large mirror. The faint scent of lemon disinfectant hung in the air. The smell of lemon disinfectant, Emily said suddenly. Her voice was flat, as if stating a simple fact. Alex started looking at her, but he couldn't see her face clearly in the dark. How did you know?" "I just know," she replied. "Keep talking." Alex, too confused to think, continued. "Mr. Finch had told him to sit down, look into the mirror, and focus on a spiral symbol drawn on the wall. Imagine you are letting go of all your fears," he had said in a gentle, persuasive voice. "Exchange it for focus, for calmness." "I did it," Alex whispered. "And I felt it. A strange sensation, like something was being pulled out of me. The fear, the anxiety, they vanished, leaving a void, a cold silence." The experiment had worked. After that day, the teasing no longer bothered him. He became quieter, more focused. His grades skyrocketed. He became the Alex Hayes everyone knew today, but he had paid a price. He had buried the memory of the process itself. Forgetting the day, a part of his emotions had been stolen. As Alex spoke, Emily wasn't just listening. She was experiencing it. She felt the ghost of the shoves, heard the echoes of the taunts in her head. The loneliness of 9-year-old Alex became her own pain. His memory was seeping into her, not as a story, but as something that had happened to her. Alex finished his story, exhausted. Tears began to stream down his cheeks. He had carried this burden alone for too long. He looked up at Emily, seeking some comfort, some empathy, but the girl sitting across from him was no longer the Emily he knew. In the faint moonlight filtering through the window, he saw her eyes. They held no emotion at all. They were as cold and empty as the glass of the mirror in that room. "I remember," she said, her voice as flat as a calm lake. A chill ran down Alex's spine, more terrifying than the memory that had just resurfaced. That wasn't the voice of someone sharing his pain. It was the voice of someone confirming a piece of data. Her empathy had been twisted. She had taken his memory, but left all the emotion behind. They hadn't just swapped personality traits now. They were beginning to swap the past, and in that dark living room, Alex realized a horrifying truth. He wasn't just losing himself, he was losing Emily to the very ghost of the past he had tried to run from. The silence in Alex's living room after Emily's confession was heavier than the darkness. Alex looked at her, trying to find some sign of the friend he knew, but there was nothing. Before him was a stranger wearing Emily's face, her eyes reflecting the moonlight soullessly. You don't understand," Alex stammered, his fear now not just for the past, but for the present, for the person sitting across from him. "That's my memory. You can't remember it." "But I do," Emily replied, her voice still steady, without a trace of fluctuation. "I remember the smell of the disinfectant. I remember the fear when the older kids cornered you. I remember Principal Finch's voice." She stood up, her movements fluid and decisive. "It's late. I have to go." She left without another word, leaving Alex alone in the dark room, shivering not from the cold, but from a profound horror. He not only had to face the demons of his past, but also the fact that those demons were now living in his friend's memory. When Emily got home, she didn't feel tired. Her mind, usually a jumble of wandering thoughts, was now alarmingly clear. Alex's memories brought her no sadness or fear to her. They were simply facts, pieces of information neatly arranged in her head. She felt a powerful focus, a cold calmness. She went to bed, believing she would have a deep and dreamless sleep. She was wrong. The dream came like a storm. It was not hazy or disjointed. It was terrifyingly vivid and real. She found herself standing in a familiar school hallway, but everything was distorted. The lockers stretched and twisted like metal snakes. The fluorescent lights on the ceiling flickered manically, and laughter echoed from a distance. Distorted and cruel, she was small, weak, and trying to run from the large figures chasing her. It was Alex's memory. But this time, she wasn't just remembering it, she was living it. The sheer terror of a 9-year-old boy shot through her. She felt her heart racing, her throat tightening. She ran, but her feet felt glued to the floor. Finally, the figures caught her, and she felt the shoves, heard the taunts right in her earthen. The scene changed. She was in Principal Finch's office. He smiled at her, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. His eyes were two deep, black pits. He took her hand, his hand as cold as ice, and led her to the room with the mirror. When she looked in the mirror, the reflection was not of a scared little boy, it was herself, Emily. But her face was contorted in horror, and then the image of the young Alex appeared beside her in the mirror, his face empty, emotionless. The boy in the mirror raised his hand, placed it on her shoulder, and she felt a bone-chilling cold. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out. She was trapped. Emily shot up in bed, gasping for breath. A silent scream was trapped in her throat. Her whole body was drenched in a cold sweat. Her familiar bedroom seemed alien and threatening in the darkness. Her first instinct was not to turn on the light or seek comfort. Her first instinct was to curl up in the corner of the bed, her arms around her head, trying to make herself as small as possible. It was Alex's reflex **. Panic set in. This wasn't her. This thought wasn't hers.